Hey guys, do not skip this important step in quilting. Also, I've got a tip for you that's going to take your quilting to the next level, so come join me. Hey there quilty friends, welcome back to Maple Cottage Designs. I'm Shannon and today we're talking about the essential step that you need to be doing in quilting to get those professional looking quilt blocks. The word is called pressing. Yes, if you are having trouble with wonky seams or your blocks won't lay flat, chances are it's the pressing that's causing the problem, or not pressing. So what we're going to do is go over some simple steps for you to help you get those things down right, and I've got a tip for you that is going to be a game changer, and it will take your quilting to the next level. Alright guys, before you even think about cutting your fabric, you're going to press it. I know this is hard to do because some of us are very spontaneous and we get an idea in and we think, I'm going to start working on that quilt today. But I want you to take the time, press the wrinkles out, the creases out, so that you can get those accurate cuts, okay? When we can get accurate cuts, then our blocks are going to come out to the right size. If we're off a little bit, it's just going to compound as we make our block. One thing I want to show you too. Here's a piece of fabric that I have. This is a little over half a yard. I want you guys to see this. So I don't pre-wash my fabrics unless I'm dealing with red and white or blue and white fabrics. So my fabrics, when I bring them home, you can see, especially on this piece, do you see? Here it is. It's almost lined up. The salvages are almost lined up at this end, but by the time it gets down to this end, look how far off it is. So if I were to just assume that this was right and I would start measuring and cutting my strips, I'm actually creating a little bit of a bias cut here that's going to stretch and warp. So the first thing, I'll show you what I do when I get my fabrics, when I'm ready to work on a quilt. I'm going to open it up because we've got a center fold line right there that is really pretty heavily pressed. We want to press the whole piece here. So here's the tip. I'm going to give you this great tip. You're going to thank me later. We're going to starch before we cut our fabric. I know you're thinking, what? But we're going to starch first, and I'll tell you why. When we starch ahead of time, we're going to add a little bit more body to this fabric. We're going to get out all the wrinkles and creases too, and this will help prevent fraying. It's still going to fray a little bit, but not as badly as it would if you didn't. And it's going to help with any time we do like even half square triangles where we're going to be cutting on the bias afterwards. It's going to help keep those bias edges from stretching so much. So, and another thing, oh, I just thought of this too. You're not going to have to starch afterwards, because when I starch my fabrics first, I don't starch them as I'm piecing because the starch is already there. You're just re-ironing it and you're already getting everything nice and smooth. So I don't have my ironing board set up here, but I'm going to show you. This is what I do. I spread it out. You take your starch bottle, and you're going to squirt all the way down, and then you're going to iron that whole area. Now we're not going to iron it till it's crisp and dry, okay? Because we don't want to take a chance. This is cotton. We don't want to take a chance of it burning. Then we're going to pull it down. We'll do the next section, squirt our starch on, and then we iron the next section, and we just keep on going for however much that you need to do. Now I'll buy several yards at a time, but I usually don't press out several yards at a time. I usually think, okay, how many strips am I going to need? And I'll do an approximate area to get it starched and ready. If I'm doing a big quilt and I need several yards already starched, especially for background fabric, I'll go ahead and do that. And then what I usually do is, it's still going to feel just a little bit damp. I will usually just lay it over my couch or something just to let it dry for like a half hour or an hour, just so that everything gets completely dry. Because then we're going to get really good cuts. We don't want to be cutting it while it's still wet because it could still stretch. Now I really like to heavily starch my fabrics. It's up to you. A light mist I don't feel like is enough. I feel like you really need to give it a good starch and you will get better results. So that then you've got that center fold line that was creased really heavily. You've got that all worked out so that when you go back to get ready to cut your fabrics, you're going to align your selvages first. And then you work out till it comes to a nice fold at the other end. Now you've got your fabric straightened out and you can make your cuts and feel like you've got good cuts that you're making. So that's how we're going to do it first. We're going to starch first so that we don't have to starch as we're making it. I know it sounds weird, but it's actually going to work. So trust me on this. Alrighty, guess what? I made a second Loving Wishes quilt. So this is the top I've got pieced. I had just enough fabric to make this. And my plan is that we're going to do a machine quilting class together for doing some free motion quilting on this. But I'm going to use it for this segment because what I want to talk about is the pressing. I don't want you to be using your finger to press seams because that's not quite good enough. I know sometimes it's easy for you to do that instead of getting the iron out, but if you have a lot of intricate pieces, you're going to want to iron them because it's just going to make it lay so much better as you're working on the next piece that goes on. Now, a lot of debate is, do you press to one side or do you press open? And the answer is, it depends on the block. Because sometimes it's better to press to one side because it does add strength and stability and it makes those seams. If you're like me, I like my seams to nest together, and pressing to one side creates that spot where you can nest the seams together. But at the same time, when you're working with small pieces, sometimes it's better to press those seams open because you're going to reduce the bulk. Now, I'll show you on this quilt behind me. Do you see this star that's coming into the center point? We've got 8 pieces of fabric there for that center point. Now, the problem is that's going to create quite a bulge to quilt over later. So I'm the one that usually does the quilting, and I think I just hit the mic. Sorry, but I'm the one that usually does the quilting. So I'm the one that's going to have to quilt over that bulge. That's why I like to press that center seam open. So that way it reduces the bulge that's going to be there of the fabric. I talked to some long arm girls that are friends of mine and they do long arm quilting, and they said they actually like it if you press your seams open for those bulky areas. So even on a long arm machine, it can make a difference because what's going to happen is you're going to really notice that seam right there is really going to stand out and look thicker, and it's not going to lay as flat once you quilt. So that's a spot where we're going to always press open. Now, here's usually the general rule of thumb is if you don't know which way to press, you're going to press towards the darker fabric. That way it doesn't show through on the lighter fabric. But there are times when you need to press towards the light fabric just because of the way the next piece is going on. So always look in your pattern. Your pattern is going to have directions. Sometimes there's arrows showing which way to press, and sometimes it tells you written in it. It will say press to this side, press to that side, and it'll tell you if you're. And sometimes it'll say too, press all seams open. It'll tell you that. So that's really your preference for how you like to do it. I follow the pattern because they've already made it several times and they've tested it out to see which way is the best way to press. Borders, typically, you're going to always press your borders going out to the next border. So that way you know that part. Like on this one, our borders, we're always going to press our seam onto the next outer border that's coming out. So we're pressing away from the center. This one too, we have seams like our heart. The heart seam, I always feel like that is so much better if you press that center seam open. It just lays so much flatter. Also, stars, like I showed you, those stars pressed open. I did a block. I've been working on it for the next quilt pattern, but I was trying it out. I thought, okay, let's test it and see how it is if we press to one side, which it makes those seams nest together so nicely. But the problem is it creates some bulk for when you quilt it later. And then I did a test block where I pressed my seams open. This is the funny part because I'm so ingrained with pressing to one side. To make myself press open every seam, it was like I had to keep reminding myself, no, I need to press seams open. But let me tell you, my block with the seams all pressed open laid so perfectly flat. It was beautiful. And I thought, I can see why there are people that like to press all seams open for every quilt. They never have to think which way should they press. It's always going to lay perfectly flat. The only problem is I sometimes have trouble getting those seams to match up perfectly, as if, you know, nesting to me does a better job. But, you know, once you get the hang of it, then you could probably figure out your tips for always pressing open. But that's a little tip that I wanted to show you guys. And you guys can see that pressing to one side, if you press to the dark side as an option, sometimes the pattern will tell you press to the light side as an option, and sometimes it will tell you to press your seams open. But just look at your patterns. Your patterns will tell you what to do. So guys, pressing may seem like an extra step, but trust me, it's going to make all the difference in your quilting. You're going to get accurate cuts. You're going to get less chances of those bias cuts, stretching and warping. Your blocks are going to look so much better, and you're going to be happy overall with the outcome of your quilt blocks. And remember, try it. I just dare you, try it. Press your fabrics before you cut them, then make your block and tell me. Tell me that you really like doing that. It's so much better because you don't have to use the starch afterwards. The starch beforehand makes a big difference. It's a game changer. Also, let me know in the comments. I want to hear, do you like to press your seams to one side where they nest, or do you like to press your seams open so that they're always laying flat? I'd love to hear what you have to think. Also, be sure to like and subscribe. So until next time, guys, enjoy quilting. Have a great day. Bye-bye. That will take your quilt blocks to the next level. Nope, that's not what we're talking about. They were talking about something that gets overlooked. I'm saying but too many times.